Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. To all members of the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of the committee, to be held in a hybrid, socially distanced manner and to be conducted remotely via WebEx and also physically in the Council Chamber in the Guildhall today, Tuesday the 2nd of November at 4 o'clock. And Chair, starting as always with the roll call. Alderman Breslin.
Here, John.
Alderman Devaney.
Here, John.
Alderman McClintock.
Here, John.
Alderman McCready.
Here.
Councillor John Boyle.
Here online.
Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Doyle.
Here online, John.
Councillor Duffy.
Shaw.
Councillor Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Fleming. Councillor Heaney.
Shaw.
Councillor McHugh.
Shaw, John.
Councillor Mooney.
Here.
Councillor Riley. Thank you, members. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, John, for that. Members, the next item is the broadcast announcement, just in relation to the statement for remote meetings. I would like to remind everyone present at this meeting in the Guildhall or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you are consenting to be filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight our request to speak. A copy of the Council privacy notice may be found on the Council website. Members, moving on to the next item, which is to item 4, which is declaration of any member's interest. Can these be verbalized, please? I'll put into the chat box. Not seeing any indications of any declarations of interest. But if they arise during the meeting, then please verbalise them at that stage. Item 5, members, is chairperson's business. I don't have any items for discussion today. That moves on to item 6, which is the matters arising from the open minutes of the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee held on Tuesday the 5th of October, pages 1 to 20. Can I take those for accuracy, first of all, please?
I'll propose it.
Thank you, Alderman Brown.
I'll second them, Alderman Devaney.
Thanks, March. Not seeing any indicated speakers. Any indicated speakers for matters arising? Not seeing any matters arising. So moving on then to item 7, which is the Levelling Up Fund first round update on successful bids.
Thank you, Chair. It's, Richard Austin here.
Richard,
Funding
thank
Manager.
you.
Yes, the purpose of this report is to update members on the outcome of Council's bid to the first round of the UK Government's Levelling Up Fund. Members will recall that in May this year, members were presented with a report on the UK Government Strategic Fund, including the first round of the UK-wide 4.8 billion Levelling Up Fund launched on the 3rd of March. Members endorsed the development and submission of 3 proposed projects under this initiative. At the time referred to as the Royal Strabane Pitches Project, Brandywell Sports Centre Daisy Field and Collins Park Green Infrastructure Master Plan. Members will recall that the 18th of June timeline for the submission of bids was extremely tight and challenging, and following a period of very, very intense project development by officers, 3 projects were submitted by the deadline. The 3 projects were the Derg Active with an estimated total cost of 6.4 million, the Acorn Farm St Thomas Park estimated cost of 6.25, and Daisyfield Community Sport Hub estimated at 4.2 million. in conjunction with the spending review and budget announced by the Chancellor on the 27th of October, 11 projects across Northern Ireland from a total of an estimated 70 applications have secured funding totaling just under 49 million. Of this, all 3 of the council's first round bids were successful, totaling a funding investment of 6.287523 million. And we've currently received the award letters for each project, with Berg Active receiving just over 6.4 million, Acorn Farm just over 5.6, and Daisyfield Community Centre 4.2. So a very positive outcome, and a real testament to the quality of the bids and projects submitted, and the very hard work and dedication of all those involved. For members' reference, all 11 projects are listed over leaf, and also just like to provide an update in terms of the current position. The administration of the funds will be led by the local Northern Ireland team for the Ministry of Levelling Up and Housing and Communities. So far, we don't have a sort of a more rigid or detailed time frame, but basically just with the note that was received this morning, which basically is going to be ASAP. There's obviously some key issues to be worked through in terms of resourcing and the implications as a result of the funding award. But those issues, members will be updated through the respective committees on for each relevant project. Members are asked to note that there's a 10% match funding contribution towards each towards the projects, and which results in an overall commitment from council of 1.6 million, and that has been earmarked in council's capital investment programme and budget, and represents substantial leverage on council investment. So there's obviously additional resources that are going to be required, and members will be further updated on that. And obviously, members will be aware that in terms of revenue implications, officers are currently in the process of updating the 5-year funding strategy to incorporate all of these issues in the upcoming rates processes. So members are asked to note the 3 successful levelling up bids and endorse progression of the projects going forward. All, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Richard. I'm going to open it out to the floor for comment, and to the virtual chamber as well. The first indicated speaker I have in the chat box is Alderman Ryan McCready. Ryan.
Thank you, Chair. And just firstly, can I just welcome the report and endorse the progression of these projects just outlined by the officer. It was really good to hear the news, that flooded social media, online and kind of mainstream media. Sometimes we can actually miss out listening to this good news, but when it's here, let's get on it, let's share it far and wide. Secondly, Chair, just the testament to the officers and those involved can't be said enough, because to be successful on the bids that we had and the time constraints outlined is just fantastic. It gives me a lot of reassurance that, we can get more bang for our buck. When you consider that 10% match funding, this is precisely how we can leverage that amount of money for those projects across the city and district. So it's really good work. It's great to see. And just lastly, Chair, I really wish everyone all the best on this. I want those who we have for the project leads within council, external stakeholders and local businesses, because just this morning I walked around Abington Squares speaking with a wide range of occupants there, businesses and others, and they're very keen and excited that this is going to be happening right on the doorstep. So it links, geographically in with the Abington Square, but also that good connection to the rural kind of side where you've got St. Colman's Park. So it's exciting times. I wish everyone the best, and you've got my full support as a member for these projects. Admittedly, the one in around the Acorn Farm, St. Colman's Park, has piqued my interest in terms of the water side. I'm looking forward to how it progresses. So well done, everyone involved. Good work. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Alderman McCready. Next indicated speaker is Councillor Rory McHugh. Rory.
Thanks, Chair, and like Alderman McCready, on behalf of my own party, I'd like to congratulate council staff and the officers who I know went to great lengths in a very short window of opportunity to submit these 3 applications. And I think maybe just through talking to some of the officers, you know, that they were probably as maybe surprised as everyone else that the 3 projects were successful. I think if we had been successful in even one of them, we would have been happy. But for the council as a whole, it's a very good news story. You know, projects right across the city and district, and to secure the level of funding. You know, I think it's over a quarter or a fifth maybe of the funding in totality is just excellent. And like the previous speaker, the project I suppose closest to my own area, the Derg Ward, which is the Derg Active Programme, you know, is just the type of money we're talking about there. Is just has the potential, you know, to be transformative for a town like Castleberg. And I look forward to see it, all the projects obviously getting on the ground and getting going. I do have a couple of queries. The match funding, is that match funding included within the amounts awarded to each project, or is the match funding then on top of the monies that was received, i.e. for Derg Active it was 6.4 million, so is it then another 1.4 million on top of that, or is that 1.4 million match funded included within the allocation? And the second question is basically how strict, or how, in terms of the applications that were submitted, you know, is there room to vary or change what has been included in the original application? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Rory. We'll come back to those questions in due course. Next indicated speaker is Alderman McClintock. Hilary.
Thanks, Chair. And like the other speakers, I just want to add my congratulations to Richard and to all the team in council for a fantastic result within this fund. I mean, to get 3 of the projects for our council area is absolutely fantastic, considering especially the time frames that you had to operate under. I think it just shows the importance of us being spade ready whenever funding like this appears and just being ready to move with it. I suppose a question to Richard, and my first question actually probably Rory has referred to that there within the rates process. I presume that this is going to, or is this going to have an ongoing effect on our rates process going forward, or have we enough in reserves to cover the match funding we need? My second question would be just around, and Richard, you may have told us this before, but what is the next stage for new projects being worked up? What I'm saying is there a second tranche, and do we know yet when that might be? And so that we can start to think about that and work towards it. But again, congratulations to everybody. It's been a challenging process, but absolutely you have been really stepped up to the mark on it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Hilary. Next indicated speaker was Councillor Barr. Raymond, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of this committee. Thank you for letting me in. I also like to congratulate all involved in securing the funding. Prior to the funding being awarded, an aware Strabane community project had a ministerial visit from Conor Burns MP to discuss the level of funding, but my query is really in relation to round 2 of funding, in terms of is there any information available as to when it might commence, and will assistance be available once again to potential applicants? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Raymond, thank you for those points. Next indicated speaker is in the chamber here, Councillor Mooney. Sean.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to welcome the news and echo the previous comments of the previous members. When I heard the news break, I was in Strabane last Wednesday along with Councillor Fleming, and I could see Alfie running towards John. I assumed that then, I just recollected that must have been the news breaking at that time, but it's great news. We were coming off a visit from the Derg, which is equally great news because we got that visit that day, and now I can see where that funding's going. But I suppose a matter that would interest me would be the Acorn project for St. Paul's Park. Because I remember being on a briefing with in June, I think it was, with Colin Kennedy, and Colin was saying that this project itself is going to be probably the first in the island of Ireland, which is great news. And but I've got one particular point. I think it's relation to the Daisyfield project, which maybe John can answer. Is it's my understanding that there might have been 2.2 million from capital projects committed to match fund the Daisyfield project. Is that the case? And how will that transpire now if this funding comes into the project? That can be answered in due course. Thank you, John. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Mooney, for those points. And the final indicated speaker is Alderman Keith Kerrigan. Keith.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me in. I'm not a member of the committee, but Chair, just briefly, and I say my party colleague has already spoke on it, but just again to congratulate the officers for the work that's put in. We know even on some small scale funding things, you know, even the likes of helping out different groups with them, their micro capital grants and things like that, they can be a wee bit of pressure on, and I know the amount of pressure that would have been put on officers to try to get such projects and such money that's involved as well, and the amount of effort it's been fantastic, and very, very pleased that we have three, as has already been reiterated by members, but particularly, as I say, I'm going to be into my own area here, and the DAIRG one. So as I say, the DAIRG active, and potentially 6.4 million into the Castle DAIRG area, it will be powerful. I mean, Chair, been around different wee areas there, as I say, I've been up the country, Chair, right wee bit there, up to Belfast, up by one of the clubs there, and you know, you call in, you stop in a wee minute in different wee towns and villages, maybe on the way down, maybe to get a cup of tea or something like that, and you can see, you know, how some of those wee places look and the way they do, and the bit of investment in and what it does to a town centre, or what it does to wee places, you know, thinking of Moira and places like that, you know, and you know, that money being pumped into Castle DAIRG will make a great improvement and just freshens the whole thing up. And as I say, as members will be aware, members that were able to attend, you know, the layout of Castle DAIRG and Amsterdam, the second and third settlements within the city and district. So definitely very, very much appreciated for the time and effort put into the officers, and delighted that there is this money coming forward. So not a question, just a comment. Thank you very much, Chair.
Yes, thanks for that, Alderman Kerrigan. And move back in to bring in Richard and John to answer some of the points that were asked. And before I do, just as Chair, just add my own words of congratulations to officers on the work that was done to achieve this allocation. It's great to see that our council did the best out of all the councils in relation to the funding and allocation, but also within our own council, the range of projects across the entire council area, I think is very striking. It's great to see the number of DEAs that have had a positive in allocation of these funds. I think that is testimony to the council-wide approach that this council has adopted. Richard, do you want to come back in to answer some of those points?
Yeah, sure, Chair. Just to clarify, in terms of the total amount secured for our three projects, that actually equates to around a third of the total awarded to the total for Northern Ireland. In terms of, I think there was a question around, a couple of questions around the match funding. In terms of the match, there's we have an amount, the total of figures given, so for each project, so 6.4 for DAIRG, that's the total estimated cost, and then that includes the 10% contribution from our capital budgets. In terms of the ongoing revenue side of things, again, referred to that in the sense that obviously over the coming 2-3 years, that'll be worked into the overall 5-year plan, currently being developed by the lead finance officer. In terms of, there was also a question on what can be included. Obviously, in terms of the respective projects, they are at different stages in terms of design and development. In respect to the Daisyfield Community Sports Hub, That is a project that has full planning based upon full designs, so there's a fully set out scheme. So that's very much as has been presented and was submitted. In terms of the Acorn Farm, again, that's fairly well developed, but obviously I believe that members through the respective committees have granted various approvals and endorsements on that project. And Derg Active is potentially the one where, obviously, in terms of finite design elements, there's still things that need to be worked out, and obviously will be worked out as part of the delivery and final sort of development process for that project. Then there was also a further question, or well, a couple of questions around round 2. As of this morning, we still don't have an update on round 2. The department and the local NI team are currently busy getting themselves up to speed in terms of how the funds are actually going to be administered. So obviously members will be aware that through some other funds, it's quite a regular occurrence that we spend the money and then claim it back through voucher claims. We actually don't know yet at this stage how that will operate, and unfortunately neither do the representatives from the department in Northern Ireland yet. So that we'll keep you abreast of that as that develops and becomes clear. And I think the last question, there was one in respect to some money and ring fence for Daisyfield. I believe that that's already potentially been discussed, and maybe John or the lead finance officer can add to that. In respect, that's been discussed within the capital working group as to potentially obviously how that money could then also or now be maybe redirected elsewhere. Hopefully I've covered all the key points there.
Okay, Richard, thank you for that. Chief Executive, did you want to come in as well?
Sure, yeah, no, I think Richard has covered the vast majority of the points. With regard to the last point raised about the money that had been previously ring-fenced for the Daisyfield project, obviously we don't require to make that contribution now if that's the case. Having said that, the sum was less than the 2.2 that's mentioned by Councillor Mooney, and we do have to find the 1.6. So that they almost cancel one another out in terms of the amount that had been ring-fenced.
Yes, thank you, officers, for that. Councillor Farr, I think you wanted to ask a question.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Richard, for the report. So it's obviously fantastic news, but I've got one question about the potential financial risk. So one of the stipulations of the funding offer is that the projects need to be delivered and all costs incurred by March 24, which is 2.5 years away. How confident are we that we have the team in place and we have the systems and procedures in place to ensure that it's done on time and we have no money to spend on any of these projects apart from the 10% match? Thanks.
Well, Chair, that indeed is a challenging question. As members know from the Capital Working Group and the City Deal Working Group, we have a huge resource issue in terms of trying to deliver all of our capital projects. It's a good problem to have, but as mentioned in the report and has been brought into last month's governance report, we have a substantial hill decline in terms of the resourcing of the totality of our capital projects, not necessarily these three. Having said that, resource needs, where we have resource, we need to direct it towards projects that are fully funded, and we need to ensure that we deliver on those. As with every capital project, we'll be drawing up a risk register very shortly in terms of the key challenges surrounding each of those projects. There are major challenges with every capital project, from land issues to resource issues to legal issues to timeframe issues. So it's probably too soon for me today to discuss individual risks for each project, other than to say we will be treating them in the manner that we treat them all with, and attempting to bring them all within budget on time. But there are wider conversations, as you know, members, that are underway with regard to how we meet that resource challenge in particular.
Okay, thank you for that, Chief Executive. I'm not seeing any other indicated speakers, so I'm happy to take that item as approved and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 8, which is the Q2 financial outturn. Alfie.
Thanks, Chair. Members, the report is for you to consider and approve our 6-month financial outturn and position at 30th of September. Obviously a detailed report, members, but in summary, despite the challenges of the pandemic, which has obviously caused very significant variances in our budget, which would point out are both positive and negative, this is a very positive report. So on the one hand, while our budgets are overspent by 807k, on the other hand, government support and prudent financial planning has totally mitigated that position and moved us into a surplus position. It is important, members, that we do consider the issues given rise both to those overspends as well as the mitigations, because obviously the overspends issues are items that we need to resolve for once the government support ceases. So, members, in terms of the detailed variance report, that's in the appendix, and a summary is provided in section 3.1 of the report, and I'll just run through what I see as the major variance issues that we need to focus on. So in terms of positives, there are 3 positives in the report, really. Firstly, we are continuing to realise a lot of savings across our support services and environmental health. That's mainly as a result of premises savings, members, and also some vacant posts and securing grant funding for posts, and also overhead savings, which we've purposefully tried to do to manage the implications of the pandemic. Secondly, members, our planning and building control income remains unexpectedly well ahead of budget, in combination almost 100k, so that's positive. And finally, members, our rate forecast for this year, LPS are currently predicting a small positive figure, so that's a slight change from the last quarter report. It's obviously positive, but I would caution that there's a lot of risk in that figure. The pandemic has meant that debt write-offs haven't been able to be progressed, and also that revaluation appeals haven't been able to be progressed. So those are effectively what will hit us down the line, and we need to be very conscious of that. So in terms of negatives, members, given rise to the 807k, we continue to lose significant income from many of our services, mainly leisure and off-street car parking, and also in environment. We do continue to have staffing pressures within our refuse and street cleansing areas associated with the pandemic, and are incurring additional fees in our waste transfer station. We have unbudgeted costs in relation to judicial review costs and planning, for which no budget transferred at the time of functions transferring. We're continuing to incur additional expenditure as a result of the pandemic. That's mainly security costs at recycling centres, communication costs, cleaning and health and safety costs, and IT equipment. And finally, members, we have a recurrent shortfall in our rate support grant, 367k, and that's obviously the subject of the next report to today's committee. So members, whilst those are the issues, thankfully those have been completely mitigated. The mitigations are set out in the table in section 3.3 and total 1.5 million, and that will obviously bring us into a surplus position. So those include furlough claims of 235k. Those have obviously now ceased. DERA funding, which we were allowed to carry into this year for waste costs, and again that ceased at the end of Q1. DFC financial losses claims, which we will be able to continue to claim for the remainder of the year, which is positive. And also, members, you'll recall we set aside money in reserves in relation to rate support grant, which means we're able to manage that issue in this financial year. So in terms of the outlook for the remainder of this financial year, those financial challenges are likely to continue, but we do have the balance of DFC funding to claim of over 2 million, as well as contingency funds that we've set aside in reserves. Those will become increasingly important, members, now that the furlough scheme has ended and the DERA funding has ended. So just finishing off, members, by looking at the outlook for our upcoming rates process. So whilst we're obviously in a strong position this year, there's a number of recurrent challenges which obviously face the rates process, which will be commencing engagement on between now and Christmas. So obviously getting income back to its original levels, particularly in leisure and off-street car parking, will be a big issue for us. The rate support grant issue is critical, and we'll discuss that in the next report. Trying to reduce the exceptional expenditure is a big focus. We will obviously have our normal issues such as staff pay awards and inflation, and national insurance costs will obviously increasing 1.25%. Members, that will have a 0.65% impact approximately in this rates process. As the Chief Executive touched upon, we obviously have significant pressures in relation to our capital programme, both from a capital financing and revenue financing as well as resourcing perspective, which we will be considering as part of our funding strategy and the rates process. And we'll obviously need to keep a close eye on our rates income. So members, that's the key issues. It is recommended that you approve the positive Q2 financial outturn position, and also that you note the continuing financial challenges that we face for the remainder of the year and also entering into the 22-23 rates process. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Alfie, for going through that in detail as per usual. Members, happy to open this up to the floor for comment and questions if anyone has an indication that they want to ask. Councillor Farrell.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Alfie, for the report. When we got the Q1 report in September, we were 846 grand overspent, and I'm glad to see that's now reduced to just over 800,000. So it's going the right way if we ignore the mitigations that are in place. But I think we're in this good financial position due to prudent financial planning and a cocktail of central government support. But we need to be really clear about the challenges ahead: staff pay awards, national insurance contributions, COVID impacts and costs, and obviously the ongoing issue with the rate support grant. But it's a good position to be in at the minute. Next year mightn't be as good a position, but we'll manage that. So I'm happy to propose the item on behalf of the SDLP. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councillor Fleming. Paul, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and on behalf of Sinn Féin, thanks to Alfie and the team, as usual, for a very detailed and comprehensive report, pointing out the positives, but also the negatives and the challenges that we all face in terms of the next year and the next year's rates process. Obviously, in terms of the pandemic, has had a major impact on our own finances. Some of that has been backfilled by executive departments, and we obviously welcome it. But we nonetheless can't ignore the challenges, and one of the big challenges is obviously the rates support grant, which we will discuss in the next section. But certainly in terms of given all that has went on with the pandemic and all of the challenges in terms of how this council responded, in terms of across all its tasks that it was asked to do on behalf of people out there, to me, it has been very successful, and council officers right across the spectrum can be very proud of that. And as I say, coming under the rates process, we obviously need to face the challenges head on and ensure that we build a positive rates process that can continue to deliver, not least the capital works, which we all subscribe to and which we all welcome. And there's a big list there, and I know we're bringing in more resources to try and address that. But again, in an overall sense, appreciation to the council officers and the work that they've done.
Thanks very much for that, Paul. Next indicated speaker is Alderman Maurice Dubeny. Go ahead, Maurice.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in on behalf of the DUP. we would welcome the recommendation coming forward here, and we would just commend Alfie and the team on a great piece of work. And as some of the previous speakers have said, this was down to, when the pandemic, we were all looking at a very, very difficult time ahead, and down to the good work and good financial planning and funding coming from Westminster has helped us through that there. And I think the planning was important and the funding was equally as important. But as other members have said, look, we have challenges ahead. We discussions coming up about the rate support grant and the challenges ahead. And I think we have a good team, and Alfie and the team there to deal with those issues. But Chair, happy to support the recommendation here today. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, Morris. I'm not seeing any other indicated speakers, and I'm conscious that no one has spoken against the item, so I'm going to take that item as agreed and move on then to item 9, which is the rate support grant cuts 2021-2022 update. I'll hand back to Alfie.
Thanks, Chair. Members, this report is for you to endorse the ongoing engagement with Department for Communities in respect of the cut which was communicated to this committee back in June 2021 for the year 21-22. So members, we've obviously had a number of reports that have come through this committee explaining the very significant importance of rate support grant to this council. Receive 18.6% of an overall 15.8 million funding pot. Funding pot that was higher back in 2009-10 and also when the new councils merged, and it does provide us with 2.95 million of funding per annum, which funds almost 5% of our total service costs. So in June, members, you were advised that the baseline had been significantly reduced by almost 25%, down to 11.9 million. And whilst we're able to deal with that in this current financial year due to additional monies we received last year for rate support grant, it obviously is a massive issue recurrently as we move into the rates process. So members, you resolved following that report back in June that we write to the 7 impacted councils requesting participation in a joint delegation, and also that we write to the Minister for Communities expressing our significant concern with a view to getting the rate support grant reversed and or the cuts reversed and the grant restored to its original and required levels. So we have done that, members, and the letter issued on behalf of the 7 councils is attached for your information in Appendix 1. The response to that letter from Department for Communities is attached in Appendix 2, and it's obviously not the response that we wanted, members. The request for a delegation has been declined, and the letter touches on all the other support that has been provided to councils, which is obviously very welcome, but that was to the 11 councils, and this grant is very clearly focused towards those councils with higher needs in terms of deprivation and rurality and wealth. So members, further to that response, the 7 councils have again issued a response to that letter, and obviously going a bit further this time, and that I think it's really important to set out the exact rates implication it has for the 7 councils, and that's set out in section 3.3 of the report, which I think you will find interesting, and you will note that we're the second highest impact, and if it's not resolved, members, we're looking at a 1.17% impact on our rates process. So we await a response to that further letter, and hopefully in the very near future. So in terms of equality and rural needs implications, members, the grant is obviously allocated to the 7 councils who are the most deprived and least wealthy and rural. So we have set out in our correspondence that we believe that any cuts to this grant could be challenged from an equality and rural perspective. The financial implications have obviously been very clearly set out. We're looking at a 1.17% rates impact if the recurrent baseline isn't restored, and potentially, members, the grant could be cut further, which obviously would increase that figure. So members, it's recommended that you endorse the ongoing engagement with the department in respect of the baseline grant cuts to rate support grant and consider any further action which may be necessary to ensure this critical issue is resolved in advance of us setting our rates for next year. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks again, Alfie, for talking us through that report. I'm going to open it up to the floor for comment. I have a couple of indicated speakers, Alderman McClintock, and Councillor Farrell, and then Councillor Hartman. And then
Thank you.
Councillor
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. I think the reply from Minister Hargey's officials is, to say the least, very, very disappointing. It's almost a total disregard for the 7 least wealthy councils. It almost shows a lack of understanding of the challenges that we are facing here. And I think the one thing that Alfie has over the years instilled in all of us is the critical nature of this rate support grant to us. It's the one that I always take away from any meeting with Alfie about the rates, how important this is to us. And it is frightening to hear that our rates increase could be affected by 1.7% as a result of this. So I think we have to keep on hammering at the door of the Sinn Féin minister, and I think it's despicable the way the least wealthy councils are being treated. To say that we have all received a certain sum of money, yes, that's not allowing for the fact that we have a less income than other councils. So I think we have to keep hammering on. We have to keep trying to raise this issue with the minister, and I would actually call on the Sinn Féin people on this council to try and get the minister to relook at this decision, because it just isn't acceptable. A 1.7% increase is just something that we just cannot be putting a burden like that onto our electorate without looking at any other mitigating factors. We need to have the rate support grant restored. I think that's crucial that we do that. So very, very disappointed. There obviously is a case here, I would believe, about equality with other councils. So hopefully we keep the pressure on here, Chair, and as I say, disappointed with the comments in the letter. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Hilary. Councillor Farrell, all right.
Thanks, Chair, and thank Alfie for the report. So this is a budget cut for the least well-off councils across the north, and every council west of the Ban is impacted. It's a budget cut, and there's no other way to dress this up. Last year, we got nearly £3 million in the rate support grant, and it's been cut by £750,000 this year. There's 3 options here. One, the minister reinstates the funding. We need to impress to Minister Hargey the importance of the rate support grant for the poorer councils across the north. But the abject failure of the minister to engage with the 7 councils impacted does not fill me with confidence at all. The second option is we raise 750 grand through a rates increase of over 1%, and that's just a standstill. And that's ignoring the other pressures that we're going to face next year regarding a pay award, national insurance contributions, inflation, our ambitious list of capital projects. And I don't think the people across Derry and Strabane can afford that. And the third option is we cut costs. We slash spending by £750,000 to make up for this funding loss. And to put it in the context, Halloween, which was absolutely amazing and well done to the team behind it, cost us less than £600,000. So that shows the magnitude of what £750,000, what this budget cut actually means to this council. So the minister needs to engage with our council and the other 6 councils that are impacted. She needs to meet the chief executives. She needs to meet the chief finance officers, and she needs to do it quickly. People do what's important to them. People will duck and dive issues that they don't want to deal with, and this needs dealt with. So the Sinn Féin minister needs to engage with the councils, and she needs to reinstate this grant because we cannot afford to take this loss. Thank you. Happy to second.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Farrell. Councillor Harkin, Sean.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. I'm not on the committee, obviously, and can I also thank Alfie and the team for putting such a detailed report together. And yeah, I agree with previous speakers. This is an unacceptable cut to our district. It's a cut that we cannot afford, and it's a cut that we have to send, again, a very loud message up to the Minister that we are not going to tolerate. It's a loss of nearly £1 million in our district, which could have a knock-on effect of lost services. And again, there's been talk already in the chamber about rates going up and people not supporting rates increases. This is going to, if this cut goes through, it's going to have a direct impact. And the way that's going to work is it's going to hit the least well off across our district. The same people who are losing out because of the universal credit cut, the same people who are not going to be able to afford out of control energy costs, and the same people who are going to be hit with new taxes that the Tories are bringing in next year. So for our council to throw further burden on people is just absolutely unacceptable. So I think that what we've been doing can't be loud enough. This is a minister, a Sinn Féin minister, who says that they understand the challenges that the Derry and Strabane district face, that understand the challenges that people face in the Northwest. But here we are with a massive, nearly £1 million cut to our district funds. The rate support grant, as everybody knows, has been cut by consecutive Stormont ministers now from 2009 and 2010. We've lost nearly £10 million. It's been cut almost in half since 2009. That's completely unacceptable. And our corporate position that we voted on is for the restoration of the rate support grant back to the original back in 2009, 2010. So to see this cut now from over 20 million down to now 11 million is completely unacceptable. So I appreciate that our council officers have been engaging with the minister, with the other councils. They've been sending the message over and over again. Clearly it's not working. So I think we have to think about what else we can do. What are our other options? I think we should invite the minister here so that we can speak directly with her and explain why this will have a devastating impact on our district, why tax burdens like this are unacceptable in a district where we have over 30% of people living below the poverty line. And I think we have to do everything we can to get this reversed. So I propose that we invite the minister here for a discussion about the rate support grant, so we can directly say that why we need the rates restored. I can't make that proposal because I'm not on the committee. I would encourage another councillor or alderman to make that proposal if they agree with it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Harkin. I have an indicator speaker, so I'm going to move to that person at this stage. Councillor Fleming, Paul, go ahead.
Again, thanking you, Chair. And thanks to Alfie once again for a very detailed report and all the work that he and the other 6 councils have put in to reversing this decision, which is obviously clearly wrong and which has a detrimental impact. Whatever about the funding that has been sent in this direction being a positive, this certainly is a negative, and it needs to be reversed. And it's also disappointing that the minister didn't meet or agree to meet with the 7 chief executives, and we would want to see that she would meet with the 7 councils who are most impacted by this decision. And again, as Alfie has pointed out in his report, and as we've known from previous council meetings, this is a fund that has been reduced bit by bit to the point now that is again having a serious impact on our own RITS process and all that entails and all that we want to do. So in terms of the recommendation, we would be supportive of that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Councillor Fleming. Let's see a comment in the chat box. Councillor Doyle, do you want to speak to your proposal you put in the chat box?
No, one point, Chair.
Sorry, I didn't catch your response, Councillor Doyle.
Sorry, can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yep.
Sorry, yeah, no, I think it speaks for itself, Chair. Happy to move that.
Okay, there's a proposal in the chat box, which has been seconded by Councillor Alderman DeBenny. If you just bear with us one moment to see if we need to put that on the screen or if people can see it here in the chamber. Okay, thanks for that, Nuala. Put it on the screen. Okay, members, there's a proposal on the floor suggested by Councillor Hart and formally proposed by Councillor Doyle, seconded by Alderman Devaney. And we have an indicated speaker on it, Alderman McCready. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the mover and indeed Member Harkin for bringing this forward. And I support it. I think there's only so much letters that we can write, and when we get the response outlined from the Minister, it's quite stark. I was taken aback when I read it. I had to reread it twice, because in some circumstances, when we talk about levelling up or putting this city back on the map, but yet at the ministerial level and at the assembly level, it seems that's not the case. And this is evidence of that. So when we ask, our constituents and those we serve, it's a matter of record of where ministers stand with this city and district. And I take offence to it. So I'd be very keen to support this motion and see if we can get the minister down so we can hold her to account and explain, why we're in this position, given the circumstances that we face. And the evidence is there and outlined in great detail in terms of the fiscal aspects, by a financial officer, which I just would like to say thank you very much for outlining it. You do a sterling job. It's just unfortunate that we don't have the support from government and particular ministers when we ask for this help, which is clearly outlined, and we do need it. So more needs to be done. On behalf of the Ulster Unionist Party, I support this motion and the call to the restoration of the rate support grant to where it was and bring the minister down for a nice chat. So thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me to speak on that.
Okay, thanks, Alderman McCready. Any other indicated speakers on the proposal before us? From my own view, I think it's worth supporting that all efforts should be made to try and get the department and the minister in particular to pay heed to this. I think that it's beneficial in the sense that the minister does need to engage directly with the councils affected. So I don't see an issue with it being supported. I'm happy enough to hear from anyone else in relation to it, and if not, take it as agreed. Just check the chat box again. Yeah, Alderman Devaney, Morris, do you want to speak to it as well? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And it was just to come in and support your sentiments. I think it's important that the difficulties that we have here in the council area and London area and Strabane, that look, the rate support grant is a vital part of moving forward and helping us moving forward, and especially as we move out of the COVID crisis and around all that there. And I do believe it is prudent to invite the minister down to open up the discussion and put our argument across, and around the difficulties and the need that we have for the rate support grant. But Chair, we're happy to support the proposal as I said, it was seconded. Thanks.
Okay, folks, thank you for that. I'm not seeing any other indicator speakers, and everybody that has spoken is spoken in favour of it. So I'm going to take that proposal as passed unanimously. In addition to what was on the original agenda, which was recommendation 5.1 on page 46, which I'm also going to take as unanimously approved, because again, nobody spoke against that recommendation. So members, that concludes item 9. We're going to move on to item 10, which is the child poverty. Una, go ahead, Una.
Very much, Chair. Members, I'm looking to take you through this report, and you can see that representation was made by 3 organisations representing children and young people within Northern Ireland, them being Save the Children, the National Children's Bureau and Action for Children, and they've come together to produce a strategic document basically setting out what they consider to be the key challenges facing particularly children in poverty locally at the minute. And I suppose what's really paramount about this piece of work is that it ties in very closely with what's happening with the Department for Communities currently in the preparation of their new anti-poverty strategy for Northern Ireland. Members, representation was made to the Mayor's office to see if they could come in and meet with elected members to take us through this report. So members met through the anti-poverty task and finish group, and quite a detailed presentation was given, and detailed in section 3.1 and 3.2 and 3.3 you can see the background to the paper and some of the key considerations that they have elaborated on within their policy position. But in particular, really what they wanted you to focus on was that in section 3.4 they set out the 5 steps that they believe that the Northern Ireland Executive should take in the coming months to support children. So they consider these to be very proactive ways of increasing income coming into families, and also in terms of addressing some immediate problems, particularly around, as you can see, the mitigation around welfare packages in terms of the 2-child limit. By removing that, they want to address the upfront childcare costs and universal credit. And also they want to review the criteria in relation to free school meals. Members, this is all set within the context of the 10-year child poverty strategy, which the department is preparing alongside colleagues within the Northern Ireland Executive. And they're asking, they're going around all local authorities at the minute, and they're asking for support in terms of addressing these proposals, and asking us now to endorse their representation to the Northern Ireland Executive. So very happy to take any comments or any questions in relation to the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Una. A couple of indicated speakers. Councillor Duffy, Sandra. Go ahead, Sandra.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in, and thank you, Una, for the report. I have to say, in terms of the visit, I do look forward to that visit in early December. Absolutely no child should be growing up or living in poverty at this stage. You know, in terms of the long-term effects of poverty on a child, they are far-reaching, and I know they are outlined here in the report. In terms of the asks from the group, and absolutely no hesitation in supporting them. I know in terms of the minister and a lot of the work that the DFC minister has been doing around some of this stuff. She has been working very hard to bring the mitigations paper onto the executive table, and if we want to talk about despicable acts, I suppose this being blocked 39 times could be seen as being despicable in terms of ensuring that these loopholes are closed and people are able to continue to receive the mitigations that they should be entitled to, and that the minister has the money there set aside to cover. In terms of everything else and all the other asks, they are asks that the minister is also working on and bringing forward in terms of the anti-poverty strategy. So I look forward to that coming forward. But in terms of the paper, no issue in supporting it as it stands. Thank you, Una.
Okay, thanks, Sandra, for that. Councillor Farrell, Rory. Oh, sorry, apologies. Councillor Devaney Morris, go ahead.
Chair, for allowing me in, and I just pass on my thanks to Una for bringing forward the report here. And many of us had listened to the presentation, a very detailed presentation that we got in relation to child poverty. And I have to say, look, the recommendations in 3.4 here, our party, the DUP, has no problem in supporting them. I think everything that's in that supports our claim as a council that we should be doing all we can to do away with child poverty and look and feed into that 10-year child poverty strategy as well. And we all recognise the difficulties. We know the discussion we had and around the £20 tax credit issue. We see the increase in everyday living going up. We see the cost of food going up. We see the cost of heating going up. We see electric and gas getting huge lifts increases at the moment, and some more are maybe as high are expected coming into the Christmas period. But Chair, just to say that we have no happy to even second the recommendation if Sandra had proposed it. We have no problem in seconding it. And once again, thanks Una for bringing forward the paper.
Okay, thanks for that, Alderman Devaney. A couple of other indicated speakers, Councillor Harkin and then Alderman McCready. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for Una for the report and for the very diligent work that you've been carrying out on this, because we've actually got quite far, and I appreciate all the work that you've taken on from when we initiated the discussion about trying to, from our council, tackle the persistent poverty here that we face. And so we have no problem supporting this and helping to move it forward. And I think that, the fact that Stormont doesn't have an anti-poverty strategy is all the more shocking, given everything that we're seeing being rolled out in front of us right now. 1 in 4 children in the north living in poverty is an absolute disgrace. I mean, and this is, I think that that's a measure of any society. It's a measure of the success of any government. And I know that there's talk about doing something about this, but we really, there has been inaction on this. And in fact, looking back over the last 5-10 years, the Stormont executive collectively has actually made things worse for many families in our district. And there was mention of the despicable holding up and refusal to close the loopholes on welfare mitigations, and it is a despicable act, and it should be. I do not understand how anyone can stand in the way of protecting people from the two-child policy, the bedroom tax, and so I think as a council we have to urge the executive and whoever is blocking it to get out of the way as soon as possible. But this week as well, there was another despicable act, and that was the decision not to fund the £20 a week of universal credit. So from the DUP or Sinn Féin and the Stormont executive collectively, there's really a failure to protect people, and that's why this work is very, very important. And that's why we have to make this more than just papers that appear on desks and then get filed away and then disappear. We have to we have to do whatever we can to make sure that the spotlight that's been put on poverty now, that there is real action. And if the Stormont executive isn't capable of doing that, it's going to have to come from outside the executive, from the communities that are being directly impacted by this failure. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Sean. Alderman Ryan McCready, go ahead, Ryan.
Thanks, Chair, and just thanks, Una, for your work in preparing the paper and your efforts behind this. It's vitally important. And if we consider our children our future, and if we can't get it right at any level of government, we all have a part to play. And in particular in this council area, it falls on us as members. And if we can't have a safe, secure, and a prosperous start to life for all our children, it is shameful and it is a failure at all levels. And it's one that we need to take action against. A child living in poverty in Gallia affects me the same way a child living in Tullyalley in poverty. It affects us all. You know, it goes beyond any of the normal political nonsense that I routinely hear in my short time in politics. And it's just we just need the conference to break through all that and actually just look at the children and think about it. Nobody wants their children in that position. When I read through some of the background or the joint papers in particular, it highlighted some stark reading. Some of the stuff I hadn't been made aware of it before, but now I do. I can kind of help in some small way to do something about it. So keep up the good work, Una, and members involved. So thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Alderman McCready, for that as well. Una, is there anything you wish to add in relation to that? I know all the comments have been very supportive, but if you wish to come back in again, come on ahead.
No, happy to take on board all the comments, and it's just great to see that level of endorsement, and it fits very closely now with the next paper that we're going to present in terms of our own local research in relation to anti-poverty.
Okay, thanks, Una. One more question on this item from or comment from Councillor Farrell. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair, and sorry for my tardiness. I'm the SDLP representative on the anti-poverty working group, and I attended the briefing delivered by Sheena McMullen from Action for Children, where she presented this joint paper that was done in conjunction with Save the Children. And we in the SDLP support every aspect and every recommendation included in there. They're all common sense. They're all, if implemented, they'll make a massive difference to standards of living across the north, especially for our children. But you know, some members in here have alluded to it. There's a certain blockage that exists in Stormont, and specifically the DUP, regarding the implementation of welfare mitigations against the bedroom tax and closing loopholes. And it's not often I agree with Councillor Duffy, but to block that legislation coming to the executive on 39 occasions is actually disgraceful. And it's okay for the DUP to slag off all our parties about stuff, but they look, on this occasion, they need to look a lot closer to home, and they need to do this as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other indicated speakers at this stage. Everybody is content to take item 10 then as approved. So we would move now to item 11, which is taking forward the anti-poverty research. Back to yourself, Una.
Thank you very much, Chair. Members, you'll see from this report that it basically takes forward or making recommendations in terms of taking forward the poverty research. To do justice to the report that has been completed in partnership with the Strategic Investment Board, I really would urge all members to look at it, because it's a really extensive piece of work. And I would like just to say at the outset that we're indebted to the Strategic Investment Board for not only providing some financial resources towards the completion of the study, but also in terms of access to Stephanie Morrow, who's been absolutely fantastic in terms of assisting with the preparation and the writing of the report. But that report could not have been completed without the engagement of our community and statutory partners, and also the work of the Anti-Poverty Task and Finish Group. So in terms of the months of work that has been completed, we're now at a stage of where we're looking to make firm recommendations in terms of how we should take this forward. And you'll see really in section 3 that we've outlined 4 key steps which we consider to be really important. The first thing that we genuinely believe, if we're going to make a difference in terms of poverty within our council area, is that we need targeted interventions. And the only way that we can really get targeted interventions is by influencing the design of the new anti-poverty strategy. And you'll know that we have previously put in a response to the expert panel, but there's now other opportunities in terms of the next stage of that design process. And what we're proposing is that we would really have a very proactive approach in terms of outlining the research that we've completed to date, but also, as you can see from the next number of actions going forward, the types of interventions that we believe will make a difference in terms of addressing poverty. And that then takes us to the second one, is that the poverty doesn't belong to any one organisation to address it. We know that it needs a really, really significant effort by a large number of individuals. And you can see that at the minute in terms of the response by the community and voluntary sector in partnership with the statutory agencies, that they couldn't do it without the financial support, and the statutory agencies couldn't do it without the support of the community and voluntary sector really getting to the heart of communities. And for that reason, we believe that the next stage involves a co-design workshop whereby we actually come together and pick the small number of strategic interventions that we believe would have a significant impact locally. And that then takes us to the third recommendation, is that we need to be innovative, we need to be strategic, and above all, we need to be very, very intelligent in this approach, because we have a window of opportunity at the minute with very significant funding coming into our council area. We have the fantastic piece of work done within the Strategic Inclusive Growth Plan. So there's lots of interventions already identified. We've got the work that's going to be taken forward in terms of the labour market partnerships. We've got City Deal, we've got Levelling Up, with all of these different interventions at the minute. And by actually having synergy across all of those, we could actually have a very, very massive impact to those individuals and communities that we're really looking to target. Members, you'll know that we spent considerable time previously looking at the Hardship Fund and what would be the best way to approach the Hardship Fund in terms of really trying to address vulnerability and poverty. It's the recommendation of the Anti-Poverty Task and Finish Group that we would actually consider this as a potential financial instrument towards financing some of the activities that might come through the co-design process, which is outlined in section 3.2. So at this stage, we're not making specific recommendations in terms of what that hardship fund might look like, how it might be administered, until we actually come through the co-design process. Members, in terms of taking forward the recommendations, we would like you to endorse what the Anti-Poverty Task and Finish Group has recommended, particularly in relation to the research that has been completed, being able to communicate that research and really set out the reasons why targeted interventions are required for our council area, but also in terms of working with our partners, setting that in the context of the Strategic Inclusive Growth Partnership and the plan, and really looking to see how we can have some joined up thinking in terms of some of these interventions that will come forward. So members, very happy to take any comments or any questions that you might have in relation to the report. Thank you.
Okay, Una, thank you for presenting that paper. Happy to open it to the floor for comment. Councillor Farrell.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Una. It's more of a comment than a question, because again, I sit in the anti-poverty working group, so we've had these discussions going back a number of months. So a few things I'd like to say. Poverty is real, and it's a growing problem across our council area. 1 in 4 people who are living in poverty in the north live in our council area. We have the highest levels of unemployment in the north. We have the highest levels of economic inactivity in the north. 5 of the top 10 most deprived areas in the north are across Derry and Strabane. Health inequalities are stark, job prospects are bleak, and wage levels are the second lowest in the north. But we are being proactive about this. We have commissioned research detailing the extent of the problem and the scale of the problem, so we can influence the outcome of the forthcoming anti-poverty strategy. The key issue for me and for the SDLP is that the anti-poverty strategy has very little reference to targeted geographical interventions for areas that are experiencing high rates of poverty, and that's us here in this council area. So it's our job to make the case for Derry and Strabane to the decision makers in Stormont who are developing this anti-poverty strategy. But not only in relation to the anti-poverty strategy, we need to make the argument across government departments to state the case for regionally balanced investment, which will create jobs, opportunity, and a better standard of living for people right across this council area. So we fully support the plan to invite members of the co-design group to this council to make the case for targeted interventions here. We fully support the plan to invite the Communities Minister here to discuss our research and our proposed actions and interventions. And we fully support the plan to communicate our research to all the ministers in Stormont, all the committee chairs in Stormont, to understand how they can make a positive impact via their departments to the lives of people across this city and district. So I'm happy with the proposals and I'm happy to propose the item. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Farr. A couple of other indicated speakers. So go ahead, Alderman Devaney and then Alderman McCready.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in, and once again say well done to Una in bringing forward this paper. I also sit on the Anti-Poverty Committee and welcome the report coming forward here and have no problem in supporting it in its totality. And I think it's important, as the previous speaker has said, you know, poverty is a growing problem across Northern Ireland, and it is a problem, a serious problem within our council area. And, you know, when we look at the levels of poverty and deprivation in our council area, it's good. This is a good piece of work here that we can have our debate and our input to how we deal with poverty in the future and to the poverty strategy. And it's good that we're bringing these experts down, ministers down, and then we will have consultation then and input to how that is shaped for our council area. But happy to second the recommendation, Chair, and once again thanks to Una for bringing it forward on the report.
Thanks, Morris. Ryan.
Thank you, Chair. Great work, Una, as always. I think the depth and the detail, which helps us really frame the context of this, is extremely useful, and probably more important with the expert recommendations and what you've laid out within 5.1. I wholly endorse those recommendations. And I think it's the work that you've done and all the stakeholders and contributions. It's only by doing that, whenever you're put up against an argument with whether it's other statutory agencies, departments, or anybody else, it really does kind of illustrate and articulate the exact particulars that we need to, as opposed to being having rebuttals on anecdotal assessments, where here it's black and white, it's in great detail. It's I think it's a real good plan that we can push and try and inculcate higher in government to say, look, we're leading the way. There's a lack of an anti-poverty strategy at the assembly level. So here's a test case, here's a pilot scheme. Let's get on with it and fund it and endorse it, rather than always fighting back and kind of putting us at second level here. So fantastic work. I can't say more of that kind of commendation to your work. So exceptional, and keep it up. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Alderman McCready. Members, I'm not hearing anyone speaking against this item, unsurprisingly. So happy to take it as approved unanimously. Thank you, Una, for those reports. Members, that moves us on to item 12, which is the review of safeguarding policy, children and adults at risk. Ellen.
Through you, Chair, the purpose of this report is to present members with a revised safeguarding policy for children and adults at risk and the associated procedures and guidance, and to seek approval for these documents. As outlined in the report, the Council has had in place safeguarding policies since 2006, and then more recently there's been updates provided in 2017 and 19. We proactively review this policy to ensure that we have most up-to-date good practice in place, and to that end, as outlined in the report, we have sort of involved 4 key stakeholder groups in terms of actually reviewing our procedures in terms of this particular instance. Again, all of it aimed at ensuring that we ensure a safe environment for children and vulnerable adults who use our services. In terms of the outcomes of our most recent review, there hasn't been any specific policy changes. However, the review provided us with the opportunity to update operational arrangements and tighten up some of our processes. Those, as I say, improvements relate to embedding informed consent within our child protection and processes for vulnerable adults, and making sure that people have activity details available before they actually sign off their consent. In this regard, particularly to photography, we have also now embedded a requirement for anyone engaged in terms of delivering council services and is to have an induction session on safeguarding, also to sign up to the guidance for subcontractors and contractors, and assign their compliance and agreement to the council safeguarding policy. And then as well, the final part of the controls which we've introduced really relates to a code of conduct, again for those contractors and subcontractors. In terms of the implications of it, this review is indeed related to operational changes and procedures, and has been screened out for that reason for equality impact assessment. In terms of rural impacts, again, the safeguarding standards are embedded within all of our facilities, so we're not determining that there's a particular impact in terms of rural needs in that sense. And then data protection has been enhanced by these increased controls by ensuring that appropriate consent is available. Again, in terms of financial, legal, HR and improvement implications, we do see that we can embed these changes going forward with limited implications, and the recommendations in front of members today is that, subject to your comments, that the revised safeguarding policy and procedures for children and adults at risk is approved and implemented. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much, Ellen, for that. And there's a number of indicated speakers just to come in on it. Councillor Mooney, first of all, then Alderman McCready, and then Councillor Heaney. Sean.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Ellen for bringing forward this paper today. Quite clearly, safeguarding is a very, very important part of our governance procedures, and it's welcome that there was a revision of the policy. You can see by reading through the paper and reading through the policy that it's been significantly strengthened, and you can see right through the key issues. I read them there this morning again, key issues from 3.1 until 3.6. There has been a significant strengthening of the council's policies, and again, I would endorse the fact that this is a very, very important part of our governance procedures for third parties and contractors and for staff, especially when we're dealing with vulnerable members of the public. And like the welcome support, and I'm very happy to propose the recommendation 5.1. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Sean, for that. Alderman McCready, Ryan.
Thanks, Chair. Likewise, happy to support the recommendations. And whenever you're dealing in large organizations, we've got guts of 1,000 employees and so many more users of our facilities and end users and everybody else. The larger the organization, the more difficult it is sometimes to really fully implement policies to that nth degree. You can look at the historical cases of lessons learned where safeguardings have failed in other organizations. And so the fact that we're constantly under review, and revising these is reassuring, as a member here, to make sure and ensure that it is robust, it's fit for purpose, and ensure that we uphold the highest rigor of safeguarding, of children and vulnerable adults. So I know it's not the easiest things to do when you're shaping policy and drafting and doing what you did there, but it's great work and it's vitally important, because generally the only time people care about policy is when it's went wrong, but that stage is too late. So the fact that we're discussing it in such length and detail with the revisions is great work. So keep it up, and thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that, Alderman McCready. Councillor Heaney. Connor.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to thank Helen for the report too. And like others, we fully support this piece of work and the recommendations in it. It is an extremely important area, and it is very prudent and wise and proper that council officers are continually revising and ensuring that it's fit for purpose and up to date. So I, like other councillors that have spoken already, fully support this. Thank you.
Thanks, Connor. And Alderman Devaney Morris.
Thank you, Chair. And on behalf of the DUP, I would like to thank Ellen for bringing forward this. I think it's very important that we keep reviewing this, that we are always seen to be very proactive in a very positive way in dealing with safeguarding. And as others have said, it's part of good practice, an important part of governance and procedure that we're dealing with these issues, especially with vulnerable children and adults who use our services. And I take on board Ellen's issue as well about photography and photographs, very important issue as well. But Chair, we have no problem in supporting the recommendation and welcome it.
Okay, thank you for that, Alderman Devaney. There's no other indicated speakers. Everybody is speaking in favour of it. It's been proposed and seconded, so I'm going to take that item as agreed unanimously. Thank you, members. That moves us on to item 13, which is the Boundary Commissioner for Northern Ireland initial proposals. Back to you, Ellen.
Through you, Chair, this report aims to advise members of the initial proposals of the Boundary Commissioner for Northern Ireland and the consultation processes in terms of working towards the final proposals. And again, subject to members' comments, members may wish to consider submitting a response to this particular consultation exercise. The background there is highlighted within the report, and I would note that the Commission itself started its 2023 review of parliamentary constituencies on the 5th of January 2021, and indeed this is to say their initial findings. Paragraphs of 2.4 to 2.9 within the report, or sorry, 2.11, basically outline the three-stage consultation process, which these recommendations or proposals will be subject to, and obviously the opportunities that there will be to feed in and make representations to the Commissioner. I would note that there is also a consultation going on for the local government boundaries, but so it's a separate commissioner, actually, which has been appointed to this one. The key issues probably that we have to date at this point in time is that the commissioners advise that each constituency must have an electorate of no less than 69,724 and no more than 77,062. The commissioners also indicated that two constituencies will have name changes, and those new names that are proposing are Belfast South and Mid Down, and the other one is Strangford and I don't know, Quinaul, and that the rest of the parliamentary constituencies the names remain unchanged. 4 of the constituencies have been designated as borough constituencies due to their sort of urban nature, and they are Belfast East, West, Belfast North, and South Belfast and Mid Down, and ourselves, well, the Foyle constituency and all the rest of them, the remaining 13, are designated as county constituencies. In terms of, as I say, the constituency of Foyle, the proposed constituency will have 72,474 electorate based on the March 2020 figures, and as a county constituency and as designated as a county constituency. There's no change to the name proposed, but you would note from the proposal set out in the appendices that the ward of Claudy, which is currently split between Foyle and East Londonderry, has been aligned under the new East Londonderry proposals, as is the ward of Eglinton, and that Slieve Kirk which is currently split between Foyle and West Tyrone, is now going forward, and these proposals aligned with Foyle. In terms of the recommendations, therefore, members, as I say, that this report provides you with the up-to-date situation, and subject to your comments, that members of the council may wish our parties to consider submitting responses to this particular proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan, for that. I'm happy enough to hear from any interested councillor at this stage, and if not at this stage, I'm sure people will be making their own representations through to the Boundary Commission in due course. So I'm not seeing any indicated speakers on this item at this stage. So thank you, Ellen, for that. I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 14, which is the dealing with the past task and finish working group nominations.
And through you, Chair, again, as you've highlighted there, purpose this reports to seek nominations, and dealing with the past, or I should say, members, is a working title for the purposes of this particular document. But as I say, members would note that at the September meeting there was a motion actually approved under minute reference SC465/21, and it's set out in your papers. Towards that end of that particular motion, there is reference that council will establish a working group to consider and consult on appropriate criteria and measures expressed as a policy to ensure that any matters dealing with the legacy of the past and associated activities or initiatives will be fully compliant with the policy as agreed. Consequently, in terms of our normal process of and indeed the composition of working groups, which was outlined in our minute reference 14519. One nomination is requested from each of the political parties, and one nomination from the independent members of the council, in order to sort of get this working group up and running. And it is envisaged that the first meeting of this task and finish group would consider agreeing in terms of developing and agreeing in terms of reference, actually considering the name of the task and finish working group, and the identification of key issues, outputs and outcomes, and a timeline for completion of the work of the group. So again, for members, the recommendations are that one member from each political party is nominated, and one independent member to participate in the task and finish group. Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Ellen. Open up the floor. Councillor Fleming. Paul.
Chair, just to thank Ellen for the report and obviously getting the group up and running, and on behalf of Sinn Féin, denominated Councillor Sandra Duffy, please.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. In the chat box, Ellen, Councillor Boyle is nominated, Councillor Tierney for the SDLP, and the DUP indicate that they'll nominate a full council. I'm not seeing anyone else coming forward with nominations at this stage, so members can take that away and nominate them at full council in due course. Okay, thanks, Ellen, for that. Members, that concludes the items that are open for decision. We're now moving on to items that are open for information, which we usually take as just that, open for information, unless anybody wants to speak to them. Needed then a proposer to move to confidential, please.
Alderman Devaney, that we move on to confidential if there's no speakers on the previous ones.
Okay, thanks for that, Alderman Devaney. I have a proposer and a seconder here in the room as well. So with that, members, we'll move to confidential items, please. Just give us a moment for the WebEx or the live stream to stop.